This is episode 36 of the Shame Proof Your Life podcast, the one where I talk about a moment of self loathing. I'm your host and life coach, Danita Bremer. Have you ever received a prompting that you ignored for a long time, like 17 years? This podcast is that for me. I'm telling my stories, I'm learning from my past, and I'm inviting you along for the ride. My intention is that you find hope and tools from my experiences. Okay, so tonight I'm coming at you on a Saturday night. My entire family is gone for a little bit longer. I've been procrastinating this episode because I know it's going to be really raw and vulnerable. So here we are. I had an experience this week where I have been trying to do some kind of inner reflection. I don't even really know how to put it into words. I've just been following my own intuition on my self discovery process and path. And I occasionally will meditate. It's not something I do every single day, though I would love to be able to. But I was reflecting, and I don't remember what exactly precipitated this, but I was reflecting on the fact that when I meditate, sometimes I'm easily distracted, but there isn't a whole lot of chatter or noise in my mind, which is something that is often described. And so I was thinking about that. And I've also been exploring some new modalities, some inner child work, some kind of, I guess it goes along with inner child work, some reparenting work, some ego work. And as I was reflecting on this idea that there wasn't a lot of chatter in my mind when I meditate, I thought maybe my inner child is hiding. And so I did this practice where I put one hand on my really it's my solar plexus, and one hand on my heart, and I do some deep breathing to kind of ground myself. And then in my mind's eye, and honestly, I this is not something that someone taught me. This was just a very intuitive move on my part. Um, in my mind's eye, I retreated into my mind. And I actually thought of it as kind of like this cave, like a brain shaped cave. And it felt very echoey, like if the floor is cement and the walls are all cement and the ceiling is cement, and empty. And I sensed that I was inside of my own mind. You guys, this sounds so woo. So some of you are really going to love this, and some of you are going to be rolling your eyes and like, what is she talking about? But I think the further we go into self-development, and really not even self-development, but self-discovery, we do some weird things, right? Like sometimes we think weird thoughts, or we feel weird, or we have this like hit of like, oh, I should do this. And so that is really what it was. It was like the spirit was just guiding me on what to do. And I was just doing it. So it doesn't feel woo to me, but it might sound woo to you. And I apologize if you don't like that. But there I was, kind of inside of my mind, in my mind's eye, and it felt very empty, very hollow. And because I went into this wanting to draw my inner child out, I just stood there in my mind, so we're in my mind's eye, inside of my mind. And I started talking to that little girl who's probably 3 or 4 years old, who is scared. She's sucking her thumb. I used to suck my thumb until I was about 8 years old. And because this is me, I know who she is, right? And I don't have a sense of where she is, but I know she's not too far. And I just start talking to her very gently and with compassion, saying, I know you're there. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just here to talk to you. I want to ask you some questions. I want to hear from you and understand your wisdom. Those are the kinds of things I was saying to her. And then all of a sudden, she was at my side. And I asked her, "Why are you scared?" And immediately, a memory came to my mind. So now I'm back in my body, in myself, remembering this moment of full on self loathing. I don't remember what precipitated the moment. I think, I think maybe it was a conversation between my mom and my dad about me and some very mean, non understanding, non compassionate things were said about me. And I remember sitting on my bed. So I want to kind of paint you the picture of what this looked like. My room was probably about 8 feet by 8 feet, maybe 10 feet, one dimension. And I shared it with my sister, who was 2 years younger than me. My grandfather made us a bunk bed. And so the way we set it up was that the bunk bed was right in the middle of the room. So that on one side of the bunk bed, about 2.5 feet wide, 3 feet wide, was my sister's room. And on the other side of the bunk bed was my room. And then at the end of the room was our dresser and some closet space. But it was very tight quarters. So, and I wanted the bottom bunk. So I slept on the bottom bunk. I did not want to have to climb in and out of my bed every night and morning. So I'm in this room all by myself. I don't know where my sisters were. I'm probably about 14 years old. And my parents, I think, I can't remember for sure, but I think my parents had been fighting about me and I had overheard the whole thing. And I just was so angry, like rage, anger, sadness, hopelessness, confusion, all wrapped into one, like lots of really intense, big emotions, all kind of ebbing and flowing through me. And I was crying, but I learned as a child how to cry without making any noise. So tears streaming down my face, full on like if today I had cried like that, it would be moaning and wailing and sobbing cry. But I had learned how to put a cap on that so that nobody knew I was crying. Nobody knew I was hurting, so that I wasn't an inconvenience, so that I wasn't a problem. So inside of me was turmoil and just so much pain. And instinctively, I started pinching my thighs with like full on nails digging deep into my thighs, hurting myself intentionally. Now, this was years and years and years before I became aware that some people cut themselves or self harm in some way in order to feel something, anything. That's one of the common reasons. But I do remember, I'm going to kind of take a little detour here. The first time I heard of that as like an actual thing that happens in the world, I remembered this moment of me in my bedroom at age 14. And so I'm just so angry and upset and um full of self-loathing. Like I think that was the moment that I really turned on myself. And I remember I started thinking, remember, I'm trying to be silent here. I started thinking to myself, I hate you. You're so stupid. You're ugly. You should have never been born. Like, you guys, it kind of makes me sad thinking about that 14-year-old version of me who took upon her like her parents' problems because she knew no better. So I'm going to come back to me speaking to my inner child. Why are you scared? What are you scared of? And she reveals to me that moment when I was 14 and I was mean to myself. And I probably said in that moment, like, I think I said, I wish I wasn't alive, which I just want to pause here and say that there's a difference between wishing you're not alive and wanting to kill yourself, right? So I have heard it said that the vast majority of people at some point in their lives wish they weren't alive. It's very common. It's very common for children, if that helps you at all. But if you wish to kill yourself, or if you've thought about that, I strongly recommend that you seek out help. Talk to someone, talk to anyone, call a hotline. I'll look up the suicide hotline number and put it in the show notes. You are valuable. You are worthy. One of the reasons why I am telling you this story is because that 14-year-old who felt so hopeless and angry and ashamed and just all of the turmoil of all of those emotions, she didn't know what 41-year-old me would be like, thriving and loving life and knowing myself so well and having so much compassion for myself in the past. There's always a reason to keep going. There's always hope. Always, always, always. I learned a lot from this experience, speaking to my inner child, asking her what she was afraid of. So after I kind of saw that memory in my mind, it kind of made sense, right? Why she would be afraid of me, why she wouldn't want to come out. And I just talked to her again. I went back to that empty cave of a mind, and she was gone again. And I just started talking to her again, telling her, oh my gosh, of course you're so afraid. That would be so scary to witness that. I don't believe that anymore. I love us. I am so grateful for us. We are smart and strong and capable. And I don't know, I can't quite put words to how I felt, like a relaxing, like a, oh, finally, I've been wondering all this time. Really, truly, kind of a moment of healing for me, like this wall of fear that has always been inside of me really started to crumble in that moment. And since then, it's only been a few days. Oh my word, so much revelation and hope, and like, just like, I am so excited for the future. I've created a whole entire program that I'm super excited about doing, like using tools exactly like what I just described to you. I'm calling it School of Self. And it's basically what I would consider an advanced degree program. If you taking this model of school, it would be like a master's level program where you get a degree in yourself, in knowing yourself, in understanding yourself, in accepting yourself, in connecting with yourself and connecting with God, because I personally think they are the same thing. God is always on your side. And when you connect with yourself, you connect with God. And when you connect with God, you connect with yourself. But there is something to be said about there are certain things in life that we don't understand and we can't solve, and we have to turn it over to God. So there for sure is this element of connecting to Him and trusting Him with, whatever life throws at you that is not your place or time to understand. I'm going to impromptu tell you another story here. It's also a story similar to the one of this self loathing. One of my lowest lows when my 14-year-old sister came to live with myself and my husband and my 2-year-old daughter. It was hard. We prayed about that. She had been in foster care, and they called us one day and said, we can't find any family that are willing or capable of taking her in. We tried to find somebody in the state. She was in Washington State at the time. We were in California, and they said, so now we're expanding the search to out of state. So my husband and I prayed about it, and we both knew that it was going to be really hard. And yet we wanted to try. We didn't want to get in, years down the road into the future and think we should have tried. But about 6 months in, she started running away and skipping school, and we didn't know where she was and no contact with her. And so the authorities got involved, and they told us that if she were to show up at home, we needed to call them. And so a couple days later, that's what happened. She showed up at home. She immediately went to her bed and started sleeping. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to call the police. Like, she's asleep. Let's let her sleep. But it was like one of those moments where you don't want to do the thing that is the right thing to do. So after discussing it, we decided to call the police. And, of course, non-emergency situation, it takes them a while to get there. They came, they asked my sister to come with them, and she refused. So I watched them arrest my sister, kind of slam her to the ground, put their knee on her. She fought them the whole way, put her in handcuffs, drag her to the car, and drive away. I hated that. I felt like such a failure and such a horrible sister. I didn't tell you all the details about that, but we were basically at our wits' end, and we didn't know what to do. And we were trying to get help, and it was so very confusing. This was only about a year after she had come to live with us. And I remember praying and asking God, like, why? Why did she have to come live with us? If this is what was going to happen, why couldn't she have stayed in foster care? And I never really received an answer. It was just the answer of, it's not for you to know. So that's something that I had to turn over to God and just be like, okay, I tried my best. I hope it all turns out, and now it's in your hands. So this program that I've built that I'm super excited about, and now that I'm talking about this, I don't think it's a coincidence that it happened after this experience with figuring out why my inner child was scared, and revisiting that moment of self-loathing and reassuring her that we no longer feel that way and that we're not going to hurt ourselves anymore, and there's nothing to be scared of. It's like it opened up a whole portal of energy inside of myself to flow that had been stuck and blocked and stagnant. I think there's a lot of power in speaking to ourselves. And I also think that unhealed psychological wounds from the past are really real. And I was also just blown away. My inner child, even though I see her as like a 4-year-old little girl that sucks her thumb, she has so much wisdom. So much wisdom. Okay, that's enough for now. And so are you. Do you have my starter guide to a shame proof life yet? If not, you should get it. Check the links in the show notes to download it or have it emailed to you. Until next time, go be you and follow the spirit.